Hello, and welcome to another episode of the MMA Scoop. We have a jam-packed show of news to get to, but before we do, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel if you're new. And with that out of the way, let's get to the news. In our first story, we have some interesting news for our co-main event at this week's UFC 278 in Salt Lake City, Utah. In our co-main event, we have Brazilian brawler Paulo Costa going up against former UFC middleweight champion Luke Rockhold in what has all the signs to be a barn burner of a fight. Now, just days away, we have some interesting news coming from fellow former middleweight champion Michael Bisping, who is very close with Rockhold's coach Jason Perillo. Bisping had this to share on the BT Sports UFC 278 preview show.
Well, the thing is, I wasn't going to say any of this stuff. Me and Jason Perillo are obviously very, very close. I was just with him, and all the time I ask him, and he tells me some things, and I don't want to betray the circle of trust, so to speak. But what good is it me being on here and knowing all this stuff, but not saying it because I'm a man of my word? No, I'm going to spill the beans. He's been training, but there's been up good days and bad days. He hasn't been consistently pushing himself throughout it. And one of the main things that Jason said, listen, obviously he's looking good here and there, but he hasn't been sparring enough.
Borrachinha, on the other hand, seems to have corrected some of the mistakes he's made since his last outing against Marvin Vettori, where the contracted weight had to be changed not once, but twice. Seemingly very confident, Paulo has posted several times to Instagram as of late, where he is looking in absolutely phenomenal shape. This certainly is shaping up to be a fight of the night, but I'm curious to hear what you think. Do you think what Michael Bisping clued us in on about Luke may be too big a detriment to overcome one of the scariest fighters to come out of the 185 division? Or will Luke's skills and championship level experience prove too much for the Brazilian? Leave your predictions down below. Our next fight announcement comes courtesy of Mike Bone of MMA Junkie, who is first to report a very interesting light heavyweight matchup for the upcoming UFC 281 at Madison Square Garden in New York City. Currently ranked number 12 light heavyweight in the world, Ryan Superman Spann will be taking on former title contender and currently ranked number 7 light heavyweight Dominick the Devastator Reyes. Reyes, a fighter who took the UFC by storm upon entering, all the way up to finding himself giving John Jones one of his toughest tests, unfortunately is on a 3-fight skid, the most notable of which was his most recent, where he was finished via spinning elbow by the now champ Yuri Prochazka. Ryan Spann made a quick rebound after his loss to Anthony Smith by getting an impressive first-round guillotine choke over another light heavyweight staple, Iwan Cutelaba. Are you excited for this fight? And if so, how do you see it playing out? Do you favor the side with the momentum in Ryan Spann? Or do you think Dominick is flying under the radar and shouldn't be counted out considering all of his losses are to current or former champions? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Next in news, courtesy of an interview with the MMA Hour, current reigning bantamweight champion Aljamain gives us his feelings on how his relationship with the UFC is. He had this to say: "Sometimes I feel like, for lack of better terms, the cliche, the red-headed stepchild. Sometimes I do. It's not with everybody in the UFC. Certain people that probably matter the most. I guess it's not always the best feeling to be on that side, but I roll with the punches. I'm going to do me, no matter what. But I just don't feel like I get the push like maybe some others do. Or maybe I'm just in my own head." This raises an interesting question. How do you think the UFC has treated Aljamain Sterling? Do you think he has been given the push he deserves? Or do you think the way in which he originally won the title has tainted his image among some of the UFC brass? Whatever the case may be, the Funkmaster has a golden opportunity to make a major statement this October at what's shaping up to be the card of the year at UFC 280. Who do you have in that fight? Will Aljo prove the doubters wrong? Or is TJ taking home what was always his? Our next piece of news comes out of the boxing world, where divisive figure Jake Paul seems to be on the cusp of another fight. This coming after 2 scheduled bouts between Tommy Fury and Hasim Rahman Jr. that were supposed to be held at Madison Square Garden fell through. Jake had this to share on the Timbo Sugar Show.
But looking at an October date and have a pretty big name opponent that we're excited about. So the offer is out, and it's looking like we're going to be able to get a deal done.
Are you surprised of another fight announcement from Jake this quick? And who do you think Jake's next opponent will be? One name that's been thrown out there a few times is one of the greatest mixed martial artists of all time, and someone who's been on a bit of a boxing hot streak themselves, Anderson the Spider Silva. Considering Anderson is coming off of an impressive stoppage victory over former WBC middleweight champion Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., it would seem this would be a very formidable opponent for Jake to face. What do you think of this? Is this too much for Jake at the moment? Or is that the perfect name to prove himself for the combat sports community? Let us know what you think. And that's going to do it for this episode. Check back tomorrow, where we'll have the latest and greatest from the MMA community. And thank you for watching another episode of the MMA Scoop.